Hello and welcome back to the Pick Swap Podcast. I'm James Birrane. I'm here with Sean Barnard. What's up, Sean?
What's going on, James?
Not much. We have a special guest here today, Justin Crosby, a contributor for the Philly Sports Network and also a writer for 76 and Broad. Justin, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it, man. How are you?
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I'm fine. It's Monday, but I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah, we appreciate it a lot. This is a nice thing we're going to keep doing. You're really our first guest for this upcoming season. So
Cool.
To get it started here, there was a Shams article released through The Athletic this morning. Not too much like new stuff on Ben Simmons, but still in the news, names still floating around. What were your takeaways and what do you see for this situation going forward?
So my takeaways of the article, they were saying that, Toronto is still in the mix, which is really weird to me. You would think that with Toronto having Siakam and Scotty Barnes, that having Simmons there seems like just a lot of skill overlap, but we never know. And then as far as I know, Minnesota still trying to be involved as well. So I don't know how it's going to play out. We hear new things every day about the Ben situation from Ben's camp, from somebody else's camp. So it's interesting to see. I do think that at this point, it feels like he's going to be in training camp and possibly playing a few games in a Sixers uniform. It just feels that way, but you never know. Morey's up against the clock, and I guess we'll figure it out.
Yeah, like Justin said, it feels like there's new info every day. It feels like the story kind of is changing every day and that new things are coming out, new opinions with it. The bottom line, I think, is that the Sixers are not going to part with him until they get at least a step closer to that star that we ultimately need and that the target of this is. And if there is a lose out on this trade, that it ultimately bottoms out things for where the franchise is at and that kind of thing. So this is something that needs to be handled so delicately. And Toronto and Minnesota, it sounds like pretty much straight through, they've been the teams most interested, but both teams kind of lack that necessary star power and enough to pull that I can't see either getting done with either of those teams unless the third team's involved. And even both of them combined, I can't really see something that works for everybody. And it's as of where it is, like the Sixers, I still think have the leverage just based on like he's still under contract for 4 years. If he holds out, that's where things will get interesting and uglier and something that's when we start to look at maybe we do have to take a cut of the value. But for the moment, I think the Sixers are going to keep holding strong, and him coming back in camp is seeming more and more likely every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's back. I think that he plays at least a good part of this early season, and they see how it goes. To cut off really quick, we were going to talk a little Rajon Rondo, but he just officially signed with the Lakers. I just got the Woj update, so we could skip over that. But in terms of Ben, I just think I'm like really sick of the circus that's been going on like just for so long. It's just either do it or don't at this point. I'm a huge fan of Ben. Justin, I don't know if you know that, but I'm still a big Ben guy.
As well. I am too.
So I would be happy if he's back. I'm happy to see them start this season. But again, I think it's this star power thing. Sean, you got a ton of replies on your tweet the other day talking about the rotations and the depth of this team. And a lot of people were just like kind of still sleeping. And I'm like, this team is still really damn good, but it seems like everyone thinks that they're one star player away. So if it's not Damian Lillard, who is a B? I've seen D'Angelo Russell in the mix today, which like that doesn't do it for me. And so like Justin, is there a guy out there that's not named Damian Lillard that you like?
It's like an emotional roller coaster with me. Like yeah. I'm a big Ben Simmons guy, and if he is traded, I want him to succeed wherever he's at. Like it's not like, oh, I hate him. I just think that at this point, him and Embiid can't blossom together. And I mean that we can leave that for another conversation. But like at first I was like, I want Dame, like, or Bradley Beal, right? And then I was like, one day I was like, just give me CJ McCollum and Robert Covington. And then the next day I'm like, D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley and picks. And it's just like, I don't know really what we can get. I think Simmons is way better than people are giving him credit for. Like, I think GMs know that, but they're just going off that last sour taste in their mouth to try to cut the value. I think everybody knows the potential he has. if Ben Simmons started becoming a confident jump shooter, and I'm not saying taking 3-pointers all the time, but literally not being afraid of free throws and having some quality mid-range, to me, that vaults him into top 15, top 10 player in the league because of everything else he does. So if you do give that away, he is 25. He does have 4 years left. We need a big name. And unless another star acts out, I think Dame is the way to go. It's interesting, though, because then you hear reports about Portland not necessarily interested in Ben, but if they do trade Dame, they would want picks to kind of rebuild with. So it's like, are the Sixers trying to get those 4 first-round picks from the Spurs because they want to be able to give Portland 6 picks? Like, we just don't know, but I'm trying to think of any other stars. I mean, Bradley Beal, that situation is weird too. So I just think Dame should be who we go for.
Yeah, it's interesting. The pendulum has definitely swung to the point where now I do think Simmons is overly hated more than he deserves, and that better than he's getting credit for at this point. And a lot of that is just recency bias for seeing the playoffs was the worst period of play we've probably seen from Ben in his entire career. And just like, no doubt it was on the largest stage, and that's certainly relevant and something that you need to take into account. But the bottom line is he's not as bad as he showed to be in that. That being said, I totally agree with the if he is if he can add a jump shot or somewhat of a layer to his offensive game, it elevates him so much higher in that. But in my mind, that ship has sailed, and that I just don't have the belief going forward that that's going to happen. And the fact that there just has been basically zero signs of progress in that regard in his time here, and zero willingness to even seemingly to be adding that to his game is so frustrating to me. And there is just like the stubbornness of like, this is what I'm good at, so I'm going to continue doing what I'm really good at rather than working on what could elevate me such a level is so frustrating. But I think, again, not that we're stuck with him, but we can't move him for a piece that isn't going to be a finishing product type of move. And the picks, certainly I'm on board with as a long-term deal. But the bottom line here is you're sitting and waiting for a legitimate star to ask out or request out or somebody to come available. And frankly, there isn't anybody just firmly available right now. Like even Dame, we don't know if he actually wants to leave. Beal seems pretty set in Washington until a guy gets aggravated and demands out, and the Sixers are ready to pounce on that, which I certainly think is a bet worth taking when you think about today's NBA and how often stars are hopping. But the fact of the matter is the Sixers kind of just have to sit back and wait to some extent here.
Yeah, and that sucks. That's the tough part about it, is that we are kind of sitting and waiting. And Sean, like you said, I feel like at this point, a lot of people are looking at what is available and what isn't available. And like Ben is a trade piece for a star. And if you get anything less than a star or a player that is like obviously and significantly better than Ben, it's not worth it because of what Ben shows and his potential. And like, I just even look back, like I catch myself going back and finding clips of his rookie season in the playoffs against the Miami Heat and that year and how exciting he was even just in that series. And he was averaging 16, 8, and 9. And like, it just blows my mind that is just gone. Like whatever that is in him, we see in stretches and flashes, and then that's it. And that whole rookie season, it was kind of like, it was really there. And then even in the playoffs, it was really there. And then it's only gotten worse. And I feel like it's just been because he hasn't been forced to work through those situations rather than he's just been hidden in those situations. And people have run away from him. And Brett Brown did it and coddled him. And then Doc Rivers did an even worse job with it and trying to just hide him and walking the ball up the floor and handing it off. And it's just so frustrating to see them not push, like, instead of pushing him to work through those difficult situations, rather they're kind of just like hiding him in the corner and running away from those issues and then just letting him flourish defensively and in the fast break, which is what he does really well. But I think we're kind of all on the same page there. It's really difficult for me to part with him in that way. But Justin, I do want to talk about your to kind of flip completely into a different direction. You have a Sixers sneaker ranking.
Yes.
Very cool. Very cool.
I would love to hear about that. So tell us about that, and then let's talk about that.
Yeah. So not only am I a big sports fan, big Sixers fan, I'm a sneakerhead. So I collect sneakers, try to get rare sneakers. I've been doing that for, I don't know, it's been over 12 years and I've been doing this. Like when I was in college, I used to skip class and camp outside of places to get sneakers. So like that's how big of a sneakerhead I am. But I was looking at, I was thinking about something different, and I've always watched what the guys wear and are intrigued by what the guys wear on the floor, especially since the rule changed a few years ago where before you had to have team colored sneakers. So now you can wear anything you want. So it's really interesting what the guys wear around the league, but especially within the Sixers. So, I decided to do like a top 5 ranking of sneaker, basically, sneaker rotation for the Sixers. So at 5, I had Steph Curry. Of course, he's Under Armour brand because of Steph Curry, and Steph Curry has his Curry brand through Under Armour. Although Under Armour is not one of the, I guess, biggest brands in the NBA as far as players wearing it, I think the technology of Steph and him pushing that brand and pushing you way to the top, and Steph getting all the exclusive colorways, I think that it makes him one of those top 5 guys. Last year, one of the really big things, the last 2 years, they had something where they kind of attribute colorways to their childhood. So last year for the Curry 8, they had the M&M colorway and they had the Skittles colorway, which is what both of them ate as children. And I thought that was really cool to attribute to some of their childhood, as well as the previous year, Steph and Seth both had Sour Patch Kid colorways where one was lime green, one was red, and that attributed to both of them liking that candy as kids. So that's cool. At 4, I had Shake Milton. He's really underrated with his sneaker game. Starting from last year, then especially into the bubble, he was an avid Kobe Bryant, Kobe 5 wearer. So that's one of the most popular basketball shoes that you can wear. But the colorways that he had, some of the player exclusives to like Sixers colorways, were really cool. Lots of white and red, things you just didn't see around the league. After that, I had Tyrese Maxey at 3. He came in as a young guy, and he sported, his entire collection. He had a bunch of Kobe 6s, 5s, 7s. Like he had some good colorways. So I like that. I had Joel Embiid at 2. He is Under Armour, but he has his own signature shoe. And I just think that's major. Not a lot of guys in the league have that. And although it's not with Nike or Adidas, it is with Under Armour. A lot of his, some of his proceeds definitely go to Philadelphia community charities, which is really cool. And his stuff has a story to it. His original colorway was referencing Cameroon, where he grew up at. He had another colorway based on video games, which is one of the things he does a lot. He just had a bunch of good colorways. I actually purchased 2 of those to support Joel. And when I do play basketball, I kind of rotate, but I like to play in those. They're pretty comfortable, especially for a big man to have a signature shoe. They're pretty comfortable. And then number 1 was Tobias Harris. Like, since he's been on the team, he's been the top sneaker guy on the team. Like, his collection is crazy. I think he did an Instagram video maybe 2 years ago when he first got here, or maybe last summer. He showed like a lot of stuff in his closet. It is bananas how many Kobe's he has, from the 2s to the 8s and the 11s. He just wears them all, every colorway. He started to get those exclusive colorways. Like, you only seen guys like Anthony Davis rocking these type of colorways because he's a Laker and stuff like that. But now Tobias is starting to get them. And I noticed that one thing that really stood out to me with Tobias's shoe wear was Christmas game against the Milwaukee Bucks. For the first half, he wore the Grinch Kobe 6s. And then for the second half, he changed into the Grinch Cheetah Kobe 7s, which was the back-to-back Christmas Day sneakers for Kobe, 1 year after the other. And I'm like, yo, that's super cool that he was able to change. So, I love what they wear, and Tobias Harris is the king of the court for the Sixers with the kicks.
Yeah. First off, Justin, awesome idea for the article, for diving into that. I thought that was super creative, super awesome, super well executed too. Totally agree. Tobias is the king when it comes to shoes. And I think that's something noticeable throughout the year, even just like always the different pop on his shoes and the way he changes it up. I'd also like to throw a sleeper pick on the list is my guy Furkan Korkmaz with his shoes here. Is the thing I couldn't find any specific model or what it was for, but I always remember him with just the yellow colorways with like the KDs and just his big feet. I'm always distracted by how big his feet are, but like I think he deserves some recollection. He's always got. I saw he wore a bunch of Kobe's. He's a big Nike guy, but Furk deserves some love for his footwear as well.
Yep. Yeah, Furkan's he's definitely he cracks me up. Just everything that he does cracks me up. But again, Justin, that's a super like a really cool idea. I'm a big sneaker guy as well, but like I think it's a nice way to look at kind of these guys allowing themselves to express themselves on the court. And Tobias does a great job with it. I think he's just like kind of an icon in that way as well. He's always got the nice fits coming into the game. No love for Ben Simmons. I don't even. What does he wear? The Zoom Rises.
Yeah, he used to wear the Zoom Rises, and he started wearing like, I guess it's called like Nike BB Next. So he started wearing those this year, and he did have a really cool colorway. It was made after the Yeezy 2 Solar sneakers. So he had that colorway. It was like all black. It had some pinkish red trim, but like glow in the dark soles. That was pretty cool. Speaking of Furkan, he does wear some really cool shoes. He started wearing like these kind of like the same thing, but these like Nike Cosmic like Cosmic sneakers. They were pretty cool too. But Ben's really like he's never been the colorway type of guy. Like you'll see him wear those, whatever sneaker he wears, he'll wear for probably about 20 games.
Yeah.
Until the comfort of the shoe starts changing. Then he'll change into the same shoe, maybe another colorway. But he doesn't really switch like some of the other guys.
Yeah, and that's interesting though. That is kind of become a rarity for NBA guys, is they do seem so like loyal to like switching up. Like for a guy to wear shoes repetitively is kind of rare, which is interesting to me. I
think PJ Tucker kind of made it like that, because PJ Tucker like switches shoes in between quarters. Like
that's crazy.
It's just like it's bananas. But I also think that, like you said, with just some of the changes in uniform policies and stuff like that, it just makes it easier for guys to express themselves. Another kind of I wanted to kind of throw an honorable mention, Danny Green, because he's a Puma guy, and that's not a big brand, but it's starting to get bigger with some of the names of Puma. But he wore every one of J. Cole's signature shoe, the Dreamer. He wore every version of that. I do think those are cool. I do have a pair of those, but those colorways are amazing. And then one of the cool colorways he had was, I think it was like a Rugrats colorway or something he wore this year. It was pretty cool, and I'm just like, although Puma is one of the smaller brands, they think outside of the box as well, with helping their athletes out and providing those different kind of pop colorways. So I thought Danny did a good job too.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a cool thing to see with all these guys, and it's really awesome that you are able to highlight it and kind of bring that out to people that might not notice it, because I know a lot of people will watch these games and they won't catch that. That's a nice little detail to check out. So, Justin, we're going to wrap up this segment for you. We appreciate it so much for you coming on. If you have anything to plug, go ahead and do so now. But if not, we'll just say see you later. But thank you so much. But go ahead.
Thank you for having me, guys. Again, I love working with Sean at PSN. So look out for me on PSN, as well as 76 and Broad for other Sixers news, some Eagle stuff. And then also, I Am Clothing. It's actually the shirt I have on now. It's one of my closest friends' brands, and it's basically just be you, be different. And I like that, and I like that about all of us. So, but thanks, guys. I appreciate the time, and have a good one.
Thank you. All right, and we're back here. It's just me and Sean now. Again, we really appreciate Justin coming on. That was a really cool little thing for us to do. And check out all of his stuff. Obviously, we're going to tag him and everything. So, we're just going to talk about, a few little things to kind of end up this episode. Obviously, we're going to get into Rajon Rondo. As I said earlier, Rondo did just sign with the Lakers, so there's nothing to really talk about there. He's back in LA, where the Clippers traded him just for him to go right back to the Lakers at the end of that year. So funny. It's just a weird situation with Rondo. I really didn't think there was a chance anyway. It seemed like the writing was on the wall and he was going to end up back in LA regardless. So let's talk about not another former Sixer, a former Sixer that was potentially a returning Sixer. Nerlens Noel has been in the news recently for his struggles and his issues with Rich Paul and Klutch Sports. So Sean, update us on that and just let us know what's going on.
Yeah. So first off, I'm very team Nerlens Noel here, and very Rich Paul's a guy who holds a ton of power in the sports world, and I understand why with the relationships and everything. And Klutch Sports is obviously such a mogul in the industry, but it frustrates me just how much like power he has, and I think it's cool that Noel's kind of fighting back a little bit here. So the story with this is obviously Noel was drafted by the Sixers, very beginning of the process with that. He signed with his agent Happy Walters, who he negotiated the beginning of his career through that, and he also negotiated the 4-year, $70 million deal that was offered by the Mavs that Noel turned down, which is one of the famous like turn down for like lost all that money kind of moments in sports.
Bag fumbler.
Yeah. So the story with that, the behind the scenes that wasn't really picked up at the time, is Rich Paul and Klutch Sports. So it's not officially clear if it's Rich Paul himself or a below agent, because I'm sure he's not handling everything all hands on. But that they talked to Noel and convinced him that taking a minimum deal the next year and then hoping for a max deal the following summer was what would make the most sense for his career arc. And simply that just was not the case. Noel took the 1-year deal that year, the minimum, tore a ligament in his thumb, played like 30 games, and has been a minimum guy since then. So he is suing Klutch Sports and Rich Paul for the negligence and loss of money with that. And so, yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen. There's kind of a little bit of uncharted waters moment, but there's also the other relevant part of that is that the Sixers allegedly called Paul to try and negotiate a deal to bring him back to Philly, and Rich Paul just didn't pick up the phone, and they were never able to get into contact with Noel about a reunion. So when we think back to the playoffs, when we're all sitting and arguing about Amir Johnson and Greg Monroe being the top 2 guys off the bench backing up Joel Embiid, you can blame Rich Paul for that. And it would be nice to have Noel in those moments. Definitely would have made a difference on the court. And this is kind of one of those things that I hope he gets his bag back after this.
Yeah, man, that sucks. That's like, this isn't I paid for someone's lunch and it was $12 I lost out on today. And like $50 million, $58 million, whatever it was, like a ton of money's on the line here, and a lot of money that Noel missed out on as a player that has a finite career. Like Rich Paul can be an agent for the next however many years, 20 years. Like Nerlens Noel has a finite career. His career is going to end. His basketball life is going to end. Like it's a lot of money to miss out on, and that sucks for him. And it kind of sucks for us, because if he had picked up the phone and had negotiated something with Philadelphia, things might look a little different. And not to, kind of dwell on anything like that, because there's no real point to do that. No guarantee he would have even ended up back here had they been negotiating or not. But no, that definitely is a brutal look for them. Tough situation for both Nerlens Noel and Rich Paul. And I'm really interested to see how it goes. And this is definitely something that is probably going to be an ongoing process for a while. And it could become a precedent for a lot of other athletes and agents and agencies themselves.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting circumstance because, at the end of the day, there isn't an exact playbook as like an agent for what you're negotiating in that. But it sounds like all kind of that was offered to Nerlens was just his word, and like we can get you a max contract next deal. That this is just take the minimum now and we'll cash in next paycheck. But really, there was no kind of marketing campaign. There was no plan put in place or anything like that as far as, and now simply, I guess the plan in general is just play well is what it is. So I guess some of that falls on Nerlens. But at the same time, I don't know. I've never really seen anything like this in the way that is pushing back against the agent. And I definitely think Rich Paul is a guy that deserves it. So I do think this will end up getting settled in some way, because I don't think Rich Paul is going to be wanting kind of the negative connotation and stories kind of leaking out. So I do think there'll be some sort of settlement with this. But it is kind of an interesting suing over money that nobody got kind of deal. So we'll see how it all turns out.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes, but not too much. He played well last year. Is poised to have another good season this season. So good luck to Nerlens. I hope that this doesn't kind of fall onto the court as well. He can keep these two sides separate. So let's talk about the Sixers. Let's go back to the Sixers for this last little part. You've been talking about the rotations a lot, the depth of this team a lot recently. Is it a good, bad thing? What do you see just in terms of this rotation? Who's going to be, playing how many minutes and where? And is this a positive thing for the Sixers or not?
Yeah, so this is what everybody has been down my neck about on Twitter. But I do think so. I originally said that it's a sneaky deep team on our roster, and which I guess I don't, as much as that is a compliment, I don't really look at it as such a positive thing in this. And what I mean by that is it's great to have all this depth and versatility and hypothetical, like the guys that you're different options and guys you're playing with. That is not a better thing than having set guys that are better at their job than any of these guys in that. And if we had like an 8-man rotation of all guys that we know they bring every single night, that's significantly better than having the 13 guys that we have options and might be able to do a good job on a nightly basis. And I think as much as Rivers deserves every criticism that he gets, and frankly, I'm a guy that thinks he deserves more than he has gotten so far, that is the one I will stick up for him a little bit with the bench last year. Is it's hard as a coach to function with that when you're not sure what each guy has each night. And like maybe Shake Milton has it tonight. Maybe Furkan has it tonight. Maybe Matisse can bring some offense tonight, that kind of thing. And when you have kind of a more structure, like I think it would be a very positive move if you can kind of flip some of these guys for like a key, more significant, reliable bench piece. And that I love the depth. And I think none of this will be settled until the ultimate Simmons decision is made, because I think that's pretty much the holdup on our entire roster right now. But I definitely think there's still work to be done there, and that it's not by any means a championship roster by this, but I do think they got better from last season.
Yeah, I think they got better too, and I think that if they're not mishandled as a team, they could be really good. And that's something that falls down to who's putting these rotations together, who's putting these games together in terms of who's on the court and when. I don't know, man. I like the depth. I like the diversity of the depth in terms of talent-wise and age-wise. There's a good amount of they got a little bit younger, I think. You took away a couple of the older guys that are off the roster, and like you do have a couple of guys that are ready to, like, Matisse, the hold is off with Matisse now. Like, he's 24, going to be 25. Like, it's time to really become put up or shut up at this point. Same thing with Furkan. Like, a lot of these guys are in this point of their career where it's like, it's time to go. This is a determining year for a lot of them. But then you have a mix-in of young guys with obviously Maxey, Isaiah Joe, Paul Reed, all those guys. You have a little bit of that mix, and we can talk about Bassey in a second. But I don't know. Like, you're looking down the line, and we're going to talk a lot about this next week. We're going to prepare for this, but the starting lineup as it's currently constructed is Simmons, Curry, Green, Harris, and Embiid, same as last year. And then you move into the second unit, you're going to have Maxey, Matisse, Furkan, Niang, Drummond. Those 10, that is a very, very, very good 10. And then you even have more off the bench there. So are you looking to cut those not cut, but take off the dead weight of players 12, 13, 14 and try to upgrade at 7, 8, and 9? Or are you trying to package those late rotation guys in a deal with, trying to upgrade the first 5?
So, the biggest issue, no matter how we cut it with the Sixers, is we're still lacking the top level talent, and there still needs to be a legitimate counterpart to Embiid. So however many of these guys needs to be packaged in a Simmons deal or something like that, whatever the end result of that is, I think that's priority number one. And like I said, I think that's the hold up on everything with this roster. I think that's why the offseason went as it did. And not that it was certainly quiet, but not that there was a lot they could do. But so I think that's priority number one, and you don't settle for what happens after until that's finished. But I think the other issue here is just versatility. I would love for Doc to be a coach that just has like the different lineups for different situations, which is pretty much what I think every coach should be able to do. But I don't really trust, like, I really want a lineup to be centered around B-Ball Paul as the center this year, and I want there to be some sort of small ball. Like, there's a way that you can win games with or win minutes. Like, not that we're counting on him to play a whole game, but win a stretch with that as your lineup. And I think that's such a unique aspect that they haven't really built around and haven't shown. And that's my one frustration with like the Drummond signing is it takes away from that. But that just needs to be like something in your like rotation, something that you
in
can
your bag at some point,
some sort of like throw this to the other team. And I just really want that to be there. I'm believing more and more in B-ball Paul, and I just think like the switchability he brings defensively and just the small ball aspect needs to be used as such an asset because they don't have another big that can do that. Like even when you think about Embiid, who is terrific on the defensive end, but he doesn't have the same switchiness and get out on the perimeter that I think Paul Reed does. And I think he can legitimately guard like perimeter level NBA guys when he's switched out there and not be put on an island. And I want that to be used.
Yeah. I'm totally with you there, man. I'm all with having a diversified ways of attacking another team in a series or just throughout the regular season. Like, it really doesn't make sense to me why there isn't, like, why you don't have that. Doc is just a guy, he's just so stuck in his ways, and he's been doing the same thing year after year after year, and that's why the result of every year is the same for him. You know, he's going to have a good team in the regular season because they're going to build chemistry because all they're doing is playing with those same 5 guys or with, you know, the same 7 guys. But the issue with that is that you never change your ways of winning. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's the same problem I have with them and what they've failed to do with Ben Simmons is, you know, here's what we're getting from him. This is what it's going to be. And that's it. Instead of putting this team and him specifically in positions where, you know, you had to fight through uncomfortable situations and uncomfortable stretches. But if Paul Reed needs to take 10 NBA games, get those under his belt with real minutes and in times where, you know, the clock isn't at 1 minute and 30 seconds up by 20 in the fourth quarter. Like, get him in a position where it's a 4-point game in the third quarter and we need something different right now. And let him feel that out. Let him play those games. Like, as a team that's focused on a title, game 47 doesn't matter. So, and obviously you're going to do everything that you can do to win games. You're not going to go into any game thinking, oh, whatever, we can just lose this one. I don't think obviously it's not the case for really any NBA team. But for like this team, when there's nights where you don't want to play Embiid 35 minutes, you want to play him 26. That's part of resting too. That's part of, you know, fatigue control and injury control and health. Like, that's all part of it. So what I don't understand is why you wouldn't want to give yourself as many different ways as possible to win basketball games. And it just seems like sometimes it's so simple. The ideas are so simple, yet so convoluted to a guy like Doc Rivers. And like, obviously he knows more about the game of basketball and specifically the game of NBA basketball better than any of us do because he's played and he's coached for a long ass time. But sometimes it's not that difficult to see as a fan and as an analyst. And sometimes the writing is on the wall. Sometimes there's just some things that you need to do. And I definitely agree with, you know, a guy like Paul Reed, or if Isaiah Joe isn't getting the minutes. Like, I think Isaiah Joe deserves minutes this year. Genuinely, I do.
Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, this is one of the issues with the NBA in general, but just regular season and postseason are such completely different games. And just like, this is where the biggest thing with Paul Reed comes into me is you need to do whatever possible in the regular season to groom him to where he can be a postseason player.
Right.
Because think about how unplayable Dwight Howard was in the playoffs last year. And I think Drummond will be exposed on a similar level because there is so much more just like targeting the weak link and just like any team trying to get him out on the perimeter and stuff. If we could just have that switchable and like the quick feet and the agile, like that matters. And that like will make the difference and will make the margins, and just everything needs to be done to build him to that point. And we're at a point where, like, for sure these guys are still very young, but we need to be building toward winning right now. And like, if these guys can make a jump, I think we're going to see a huge jump out of Maxey this year. He's another guy that like the holds need to come off a little bit, let him just do his thing. And I feel a similar way about Paul Reed. I think Paul Reed really can help this team, and he just checks a box that just needs to be there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And another thing with these young guys, like Paul Reed as a big, Tyrese Maxey as a point guard, Isaiah Joe as a wing, they like think about that lineup, add those couple guys, maybe add Matisse in there, and add Ben Simmons. If your plan is to keep Ben Simmons, if your plan is to have him around, and I'm not saying we're not going to go back into that, but he is perfect. Paul Reed is a perfect big to match with Ben. Switchable, flying up and down the court, high hustle, high intensity. Like those are the guys that, like, if you're looking at, grooming this team going forward, having another big that really can not only just play with Ben, but complement Ben. And looking at the way that this team works, like when Embiid is on the floor, it's Embiid's team. And without question and without a doubt, that's the way it should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But thinking about it in another way, you should try to optimize everyone else that you have. And instead of doing this bullshit of where you're like 4 bench guys in Tobias, go have fun, find a way to put these teams together and put these little units together that can play well with each other and make it uncomfortable for other teams. Change the pace of the game. That's where you win. Mm-hmm. But like instead, you just get comfortable with doing the same thing over and over and having, dribble handoffs with Dwight Howard to Shake Milton and then trying to get the ball to Tobias Harris in the post. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, and just take away Ben Simmons for a second. Just Paul Reed's so much more of a modern NBA player and so much more of a fitting that, like, we can't be living in, like, finding just a worse version of Joel Embiid, which Drummond kind of checks that box too. Is he just tries to do the similar things but just can't do them as good because there aren't a lot of people as good as Joel Embiid. There simply is not another player in the NBA that can do what he can do. And we will never find success. We keep trying to just do the same things that we would do if he was on the court with somebody else there and that kind of thing. And just like there has been such a revolution with the NBA with, like, you have to be able to be so much more complex as a player. Like, I think about Dwight Howard. I really don't think Dwight has gotten that much worse since his prime. I just think that the game has changed so rapidly, and that, like, no doubt he's for sure slowed down steps and that, and like he's not the same Dwight Howard he was, but the gap isn't that massive to me. I think it's so much more has to do with just the way the game has changed that he can't succeed in that. And credit to him for finding a way to reinvent himself and do that. But I think Drummond's like a similar boat. Like a couple years ago, Drummond was right up there with the top bigs.
He was an all-star.
Yeah, he was an all-star. He was going neck and neck with Embiid. They were having their beefs, and just like that isn't the way to win anymore. And Embiid is the exception to the rule, and the fact that he is that good and has kept up, and he can do the thing. Like him becoming an elite mid-range shooter just changed his game last year, and that opened up everything for him. And he can shoot the three. He can ISO score. He can move better. But there just aren't, like, Andre Drummond's not that, and we can't like act like he is. And there needs to be different looks and just building toward this modernization. And I think the Paul Reed's a big part of that.
Yeah, I mean, look at a guy like I think he's very similar to a guy like Chris Boucher, a guy the big in Toronto, and like obviously they weren't very good last year, but he took major strides last year. They let him play freely, they let him hustle all over the place, switch on defense, be aggressive on both sides of the ball, and like I don't know, it just seems like it makes no sense to me why you don't allow, like, it seems like a lot of times genuinely like there's some players that Doc really unlocks. Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, clearly guys that can go get their own buckets and do those things. But then it seems like there's a few guys on this team that just have become like handcuffed by Doc Rivers. Yeah. And I look at the way that obviously in a completely, an entirely different role, but Matisse Thybulle, why was he able to be so effective in the Olympics? He was a completely different player. Like, go back and watch some of those games. He's handling and like, again, a completely different role. He's handling the ball. He's being more aggressive, but like
screen and roll.
Like, just make him do something different. Don't have him out there just to be a defender and then stand in the corner and wait to be open. Have him cut, move him off the ball, have him as a screen and roller. Look at what the Nets did with Brown. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me why you allow your players to continuously be one-dimensional. You keep Ben as a one-dimensional player. You keep Matisse Thybulle, a one-dimensional player, but then you have guys like Tobias Harris who just like is somehow like a significant, like the best version of himself under Doc, and he allowed Joel Embiid to do whatever he wanted, which is obviously a very good decision. But I'm hoping to see like Paul Reed. Obviously, with Tyrese Maxey, and we're gonna like this. We can preview next week because there's gonna be a little bit of a discussion here about the starting lineup and where Tyrese Maxey could potentially fit in there. So before we totally go, Charles Bassey is on his way to signing a 1 year. What was it? 1 year minimum deal?
Non-guaranteed.
So all this time they've been waiting to sign this deal and negotiating, doing whatever they've done, and that's what they got to was a 1 year non-guaranteed deal.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. Just first off, props to Charles Bassey for just the confidence he has in himself, because second round pick, no guaranteed contract there, sits out summer league, then now is getting a 1 year non-guaranteed deal on a role that there really aren't any guaranteed minutes for. Like, he could conceivably come in and, like, he's buried behind Drummond, behind B-Ball Paul, behind Embiid, obviously, that it's like, to bank on yourself to be able to show something in minutes that we don't even know are there. I respect the confidence, but aside from that, I do like his game a lot. I love the shot blocking he brings. He's improved as a shooter. He's stepping toward becoming the modernized big, but he's still kind of he's more Drummond than he is B-Ball Paul for sure. But I like what he brings defensively. I think he's legitimate. He can rebound the ball really well, and I do think, like, I like him significantly more than Philip Petrovic. So I'll take it. I'm happy he's here. I think it's a good last roster spot, but I don't expect a ton from him in year one.
Yeah. I was I don't really have, like, it's hard to tell right now, especially without him being in summer league at all. But I am excited to see them just kind of get back into a swing of things. And honestly, like, training camp will be telling, I feel like, in a lot of ways. But I also think it'll still be ambiguous with these top 15 guys. And again, I don't expect too much from Bassey, but this was just an interesting kind of wrinkle and everything it kind of got swept under the rug with the Simmons news today, if you want to call it news. That being said, though, we are going to wrap this up. Follow us on all of our socials. You can see them down here at PickSwap on Twitter. Follow us on subscribe on YouTube at the PickSwap Podcast, and then, you know, on Spotify and anywhere you find your podcast. Really, PickSwap Podcast is everywhere. You can follow Sean at Sean_Bernard1 and me at JS Birrane17. We appreciate you guys. Keep hitting up the YouTube. We hit 100 views. We're doing our best. We're having a lot of fun. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys soon.